Got to turn on my record meeting. So here's the class outline. Just pretend this is tentative for now. And I have, in anticipation, we're not going to get to this because I'm pretty sure I walked through it this morning. Not included the homework I wanted to have with the template that was in the old schedule. And so we'll just be doing the homework that's actually in the folder. Always rely on your class sessions for the homework. I'll have exactly what to do that week. So here's what I hope to cover: the introduction to SketchUp, why and when you'll use it. This one we're not going to get to. I figured that's a step too much and we can wait till after the break. Layers, groups and components, basic modeling tools, and keyboard shortcuts. If we don't get to keyboard shortcuts, I'll be reviewing this with you in a couple of seconds and it's available to you. So when we click on homework and quiz, you'll have your basic SketchUp assignment with the session 8 rubric and the corner room with dimensions. So it'll all make sense once you open it up. Let's see if my PDF reader works on this computer. All right, so this is just the corner. You can see the deck of the boathouse with some dimensions on some quick walls that I drew up and the thickness of the walls. And this will make sense as we go through SketchUp, what I want you to do with this information. Click back to the homework. Here's your rubric. So it's 100 points possible. There's going to be a lot of basic drawings. So as before with CAD, we had two assignments, one really basic and one really complex. I'm making some very basic points that you can get here. If you don't end up getting a hang of this week, you can build a good point base for at least half of it off of these, which sound hard because it's another program, but they won't be once you see it today. And then I could say advanced use, but really it's just the basic tools. It's a little bit more advanced than just drawing shapes. So that's where you're coming in and you're making some layers, drawing those walls according to the PDF in SketchUp, and making your walls groups and putting the group on the wall layer. So do note from going on forward that the students that are in EDSN 108, they will have a little bit of a different path in this course. They'll be using this model in their actual class, and so they might want to add more walls or do different walls than what I'm assigning because they're figuring out the space layout and how the space can be amply used. So for the students who are not in 108, and you know who you are, then use my PDF. If you're in 108, then just draw a room that you actually drew in your existing layout. So that's our rubric. We can come back to that in the end if we have some questions on it. And then there's the SketchUp quiz over session 8 video. So it says rewatch video or review class notes to take this quiz. If you're not usually a note taker, please do take notes. I mean, you'll have this on the video, but it's always helpful to just highlight key points, or if it sounds like I'm saying something extra exciting that might be on the quiz, or if I use the words this will be on the quiz, then you can have that at your fingertips and ready. From now on, you don't have a book. We didn't require you to buy one this year, and not knowing for the first time we taught it which would be the best to use. So it's going to be my video, and then if we go back out to content for session 8, extra videos. SketchUp has a wonderful library of information available to you that will cover in more depth or in the same way but a different vocabulary with a different voice exactly what we covered in class, kind of broken into sections. So I have getting started video. It says watch as needed. Some of these videos cover what we did in class. Feel free to watch ahead and practice over break. Obviously I'm not going to require anything on the homework we didn't cover in class, but that's just for people who get excited about it and want to use it. There sometimes are those people out there. Videos 1 through 3 will cover the basic modeling we talk about in class, and video 4 talks about the difference between groups and components. So these are all what we're doing in class today, just a different person giving you the information in a cleaner way, focusing on each of these tools and specific areas. If you want to see what this looks like, when you click on it, it'll say part 1, getting started with SketchUp, and You can just go down and click play each of the videos. They're short, 10 minutes. I mean, it kind of adds up to maybe an hour. You can watch them as you want to watch them. If you don't, don't. But if you can't get a hold of me, it really is just as good, if not maybe better for some of you who want it presented in a different way. We all learn differently. So other links available this week, double click, triple click explained. This is more informational. It's not a video, but it does a great job of step-by-step instructions since you don't have a book of something I'm going to cover today that's fairly technical. And if you have no other access to me, then these are great instructions for what I'm talking about, especially this area with the 3 boxes. So you can kind of scroll ahead. Here's double click or triple click. You'll know what I mean once we start going over it in class. The toolbar in depth, that's all your basic tools. We're going to talk about, drawing a line, moving, the basic modifying tools that we have in AutoCAD. This will be the covering of those if you don't want to have to go through all of this. So I'm kind of piece parting it out in a way that's easy for you to understand and have access to extra help. Here's the PDF on keyboard shortcuts for SketchUp. I'm not going to be using keyboard shortcuts because it's not useful to you in teaching when I'm typing away over here and I could say I'm pressing P, but it's easier for you to see on the screen when I click and grab the tools. But this will really speed you up. This is how you should learn, and if I could teach to it and say that thing, I'm pressing P, it's just not useful for a video recording of what I'm doing. But this is available to you. Please practice these tools. And even if when we review and you need help, you use them, just let me know you're using them. Going back again to extra videos. Example of a rendering plugin. I'll talk about how SketchUp isn't a rendering program, not realistic rendering. It renders, but it's not meant for that. There are things you can buy. I know we all love buying more things. Some are free, but they're really hard to use. You can really explore them. There's hundreds of things out there. We'll talk about how it's free to people to use initially, and SketchUp really kind of took over the world because it's open to all users. So there's things you can buy and add that take your SketchUp from that to this, where it almost looks like a photorealistic and it's not done rendering. It gets very close to Revit. So it's much easier than Revit to use, but then you buy these plugins, and while there's still a learning curve on them, I feel like they're easier to use. And if you're doing portfolio, it might be worth the $24 that you spend for your plugin. So there's varying prices on those. You can watch videos and look up your own videos. This is just one example. So I'm speeding through this because I want to get to the actual content, but so you know what's available to you this week. Obviously, we do have the break, so the homework is not due the 10th, or is that, yeah, it's not due the 10th, it's due the 17th, so I'm giving you that full work week, obviously, off, and then a very light homework load that will be due the 17th so that I can ensure you've at least used the tools going into a little bit more difficult homework on the 17th. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and modify that to be smaller, and we're going to hope this runs correctly because this is the school's computer. I agree. Continue. All right. So this is SketchUp Pro 2016. It says, will this homework be due next week? Oh, the 10th. There you go. Yep, answered that question, Robin. It'll be due the 17th. Do not worry about homework over break. I'd never do that to you. So looking at this screen, when you open your SketchUp Pro, there's, hopefully this works out because it says buy SketchUp Pro. Let's see if it does let us start using. SketchUp requires a template. Select a template. Okay, so this will be the first prompt that you get, and you will want to select a template. And notice that there's a couple of different options. There's simple template, feet and inches, and it tells you the units are inches, general for modeling templates. Simple template meters, we're not concerned with this. Obviously, that might be something in an overseas application we'd want to use, or when we're working with different products, but for what we're doing in class and most of the fields locally or in the big cities, we'll just stick with feet and inches. There's architectural design, feet and inches. There's millimeters, maybe more for engineering, conceptual design development. There's more meters, but in architectural design, and it continues on to construction documentation. So even more as we go on. Woodworking, they all have different ones. But what we're going to be working from for our class is the first one, the simple template, feet and inches. I've researched and I have my own book I'm working from in order to teach this on top of my firsthand knowledge of it. What's the difference between these two? Because these would be the two I think I'd want to use. And an architect said it well in a blog. There really is no difference besides pretty much what you're seeing in the preview window. They took the ground and made it gray, and they took the background and made it gray. And it's just for people who are a little OCD and want it to look like that. You can modify that from within this template though. So we're going to stick with this one. You just click it and say start using SketchUp. And here's our Rosie the Riveter, it looks like, in the foreground. And she just gives us a reference of space and height of things. So that's if you're going to start a drawing from scratch. Notice that Rosie the Riveter is not three-dimensional. She happens to be more like a paper doll. You can kind of tell as I'm rotating, yeah, maybe an upper view if I orbit. There you go. She has no dimension to her. So let's talk a little bit about SketchUp. And I'm actually going to open the boathouse drawing from my GoFlex free agent drive. And I need to download this. So I think this is the only thing missing from your homework I didn't upload yet. So if I go in Ivy Tech 2016 AutoCAD session 8, here's my boathouse SketchUp model. And this is what happens if when I upload this drawing for you, what's going to happen when you open it. So start using SketchUp and it'll open right up. So this is prompting me because I made it in 15 on my own personal computer before they loaded on 16. You'll be able to load this file in a previous version of SketchUp if you save it in 16. So that means please download 16 because once you open it in 16, you have to save it down in order for other people with lower versions to open it. You can do that by saving, but for what we're doing, we want it to be in the newest version that you've downloaded for the class. So here is our boathouse model. Notice how it's already drawn for you. I'm going to be giving you the majority of the 3D work for this class. So I have a site plan with some hills. Here's that low brick wall. We'll talk about modifying materials in a later week. I have my windows in. Here gives you a good idea of what those beams look like. And the back sliding doors, the high windows, the chimney. This is what they're doing with the water. It's kind of hard to grasp from a 2D perspective, but there's a river coming here with kind of an inlet that flows to the house where they can park their boat and a little walk-off area, and then they can come up into the house by the back porch steps. One second, I have a question in class. Yep. Yep, it's just that tiny part underneath. So it parks underneath there, and then I have included, because I never had to do this project before as a student, some different things you'll see as I turn on layers. I started playing with where I wanted to put my kitchen. So for students not in 108, basically I'm looking at this more as where do I want windows and walls? I'm not exactly trying to follow the rules completely because I don't want any 108 students to feel like they want to copy this for wonderful space planning. I don't want to limit them on their options either. So I'm just doing whatever I want to do. I'm not necessarily even sticking with the style of the house, which they have to stay within. I have a fairly contemporary kitchen with a parquet floor. So this just gives you a concept, though, of what you can draw once you get to a little bit more advanced. And it's not that far from where we're going to get today with the tools. But these are all individual cabinet components that I've put into a group. So they're nice and safe within here as one thing, and I can move them as a whole. But let's talk a little bit about SketchUp now that we have a nice model to look at instead of an empty space. And I might bounce back and forth between the empty space and this model. So I am going to flip my notes over and start talking about SketchUp background. So we talked about the setting is architectural. Why and when do you want to use SketchUp? So with SketchUp, you're always working with 3D. When you first come into the model, you'll notice we're not in that 2D plan that you have in AutoCAD. Although by adjusting our views through camera, we can come up here and we can change standard views to top. And it's still a little three-dimensional, but it gives us that overall feel of what our model looks like from above. And similar to AutoCAD, we have zoom extents, so you can kind of rotate around and see your site plan looks pretty much like what we drew in class. But since you are in 3D, you use it for 3D modeling. And it was actually the first 3D modeling program that was offered free to the general public. So that's why it's so popular, not to mention the fact, like I've said, it's easy. If you notice at the top, the toolbar, they're very similar tools to what we've been using in AutoCAD. The hand is the pan tool. Zoom looks like a magnifying glass. Zoom extents is just this magnifying glass with arrows pointing outward. We have materials, which is something different than what we do in CAD. We have an orbit tool, so we have orbit in CAD. It looks a little different, but the same concept. So even those words will help you get through SketchUp easier because you're familiar with them in AutoCAD. Here's a tape measure. This is scale. It's very similar to the AutoCAD symbol. Rotate is also similar. Move. Offset looks a little bit different, but the word would help you figure out what that tool does. And push-pull, because this is a three-dimensional only tool, is something that's not in CAD and you have to learn for SketchUp. We have rectangle, arc, other shapes available, circle, polygon, different types of arcs, just like in AutoCAD, although we focused on the 2-point arc. Same in here, we're going to focus on the 2-point arc. Instead of having the line tool, you have a pencil tool, because we're thinking more visually, so we're not going to have just a straight line. You can also have a freehand tool, which is exactly what it sounds like, and we can preview that later. Here's Erase. You're familiar with Erase from plenty of different programs. And then this is your Select tool, which is similar of crossing boxes in AutoCAD and just left clicking, but you always have to make sure you have your Select tool ready, and it's almost like the computer's having a hard time thinking about how big my model is. But if you're in the middle of a command and you want to get out of it, so I'm moving things over, and I hit Escape, if I want to just get into select something, I'd have to select the Select tool first before I can pick an object. So that'll be something you have to get used to. We also have 3D Warehouse, which comes a little bit, I think 2 classes from now, and some extension software, which was kind of that tool, the plugin that did the nice 3D rendering. Those are things that go with these libraries. Okay, so free. It was the first thing that was free to the public, which meant that it was open for them to accept models using the 3D warehouse, which I might as well at least show you what that looks like so you can understand how great SketchUp is. So because it was free, people instantly started using it, whether it was for interior design, architectural, people playing around, woodworking. And when they were using it, they uploaded every model, whether it was a good model or a bad model. So that's kind of something you have to watch for in SketchUp. But there's models of anything you could think of, a grill, any type of furniture, and you can come through and type, you know, let's see, window is a good example, I think, of variety that they have. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of options for windows that you can drag and download into your model. So we'll talk about all those options, but that's what's great about the initial stages of SketchUp. It used to be free all the time. Even the things that are now paid for were free when I was a student. It was more recent that they were purchased by a different company, and they've started making people pay for Pro. But Pro is used by architects, production designers, and other design professionals, so especially engineers. It has some more opportunity to bring in CAD drawings that is not in the free version, along with other solid modeling options, which we won't get into in this class. We'll just be purely working with SketchUp as that paper modeling that we were looking at before. So all the other programs not only are more costly, your $49 for a year license really isn't that bad. Revit's much more expensive. But it's also the free version that you can get when your license expires can do almost everything Pro can, with the exception of layout and some tools using AutoCAD. So at the very least, download the free version after you lose it. So only with Pro do we get the layout presentation tool. That is on your desktop. It should have come in, so we have the Style Builder and the Layout 2016, and we will talk about that way at the end because that will be how we put together our final presentation. It comes with a number of tutorial aids in learning, and it deals with two different types of modeling. So I said we'd focus on one of those types. So the two basic types of modeling are solid modeling and surface modeling. So the majority of SketchUp, 90% of it, and what we're going to be focusing on is actually surface modeling. What that means is when I click on a face of my wall and I delete it, it's empty inside. So it's hollow and there's nothing actually solid to that drywall wall. It's basically an empty box, and it's made up of faces and edges. So thinking of faces and edges, let's go back to that blank drawing and think of it as a little bit more basic. So if I come down here to my Rosie the Riveter drawing, so drawing a very basic rectangle and using the push-pull tool, and I will go back to rectangles, this is just to explain the modeling. If I pull it up again and I select one of the faces and I go to delete or modify it, when I hit delete, it's just a big empty box. So surface modeling is empty on the inside as opposed to solid modeling. You might think of SolidWorks that goes with AutoCAD or some other engineering program software. And really, solid modeling is dealing with things that are filled on the inside, so like a ball of clay, as opposed to this, which is like basically paper dolls, is a good way to think about it. We're cutting and pasting paper pieces, or if you have to build a 3D model later in your design career at Ivy Tech, you will have that hollowness to it. We're not trying to make a 3D printable object. Solid modeling is figuring out the actual volume of an object. So that is the main difference between the two types of modeling. I'm going to take a minute and read the chat because it looks like people have been busy adding information in here. So it looks like the last question I had is this going to be a problem going from PC to Mac? I just got the Mac Pro for this program. And my answer to that is no, it won't. I talked to Gabe, I think you might have been in the background on that, and I had originally said they're almost exactly alike, and they really are. It's 90% in what I'm looking at in the book that I have. But the tutorials, even online, they don't teach to one or the other. The toolbar is all the same. It's a little different verbiage. They don't call, your start menu, but you get to everything fairly similar. If you have an issue with anything, I'm willing to walk through it with you, and also gonna try and look up videos for Mac users to add to that supplemental video area. And then it says, let's see, Camara says, I downloaded Pro but can't find the student license PDF. So I had uploaded the two PDFs. One was Pro, and let's see. It looks like Robin says, I paid for the student version following the instructions. It says at the top of the screen that I have 26 days left in the trial. After you paid for your actual license, Robin? The $49? Yeah, you do have to do another, yep, download it from the email they sent me today. So it should have been a year license when you got, did you get to that step in the instructions where it says buy the year license for $49, and even after that, then it says you have a trial that's going to run out? Okay. And did you enter your license into SketchUp already? Because my thought was maybe it's running off of the trial version that comes in by downloading SketchUp automatically. Okay, that's what it is. When you enter your license, it'll, at the end of the free trial version, if this happens to anyone else and there's no prompt for it, you will be able to enter your license. It'll say we need a license now, and that's when you can enter the license they have sent you into the program. So it should be fine that way, and I can look into, I'll write a note if there's a way to enter it before the trial expires. All right. Okay, so back to SketchUp. So since we're dealing with surfaces instead of actual solid objects, let's talk a little about the verbiage that we're going to be using. So this is called, and let me use the select tool because it's more like an arrow. What I have highlighted right now is a face. It's only existing because it's made up of edges. What I have highlighted now is an edge. They'll also call an edge a line. So a line is an edge is a line. They use those terms interchangeably when we're talking about SketchUp and drawing. So when you do the line tool, or this pencil up here, line, and you draw a line across, you've simply created another edge. So there I can select an edge. But also by adding a line, I made it all the way across from one end to the other, I now have two faces. So they can function as individual faces by coming up here and using the push-pull tool. It allows me to bring it out or take it in because I added that edge. So that's just one interesting thing. Again, we'll revisit the tools individually as we get to them tonight. But remember, we're working with faces and edges or lines, whichever you prefer. I might most of the time call them edges in our software. Notice that when I deleted the face, it deleted the face, but we still have edges. So if I go back in, I could draw a line and complete the loop, because what that told me was I no longer had the face since I made it basically non-existent, and I just need one more line to complete that four-edged loop. So that's a little bit of terminology that they want you to get used to as well. A closed loop is 4 lines, or really it's 3 or more lines. So I could do a triangle as well. And as long as you close the loop by coming back to the corner, it will create a face. The face and 3 edges for our triangle. But if I delete out the face, basically what I've told it is the loop is open again. So one way to add that face back in is to simply redraw the final line and close it so it thinks that there's enough lines to create the loop. So those are the most basic terms that we're going to be using for the two main items, edges and faces. So I'm just crossing off things as I talk about them. It says that SketchUp Pro does have some limited use of solid features, but we're not going to be diving into them, and in this version you don't have those. They come up automatically in 2015 or earlier at the top, but here it looks like we don't have that toolbar on, although it is available and could show up at some time. All right. The other thing to note is that SketchUp is made up of straight lines only. There are no true curves in SketchUp. If you notice, when I select my arc tool and I come in space and I start drawing an arc, it's not looking nice and smooth around the curve of the arc. And that's because when you zoom in, and you don't have to zoom in too far, it's not like CAD, each of these is just simply a straight line that is faking a curve. So you're never going to have a true circle. You're never going to have a true arc that's purely curved. You'll end up with something where it's a little disjointed like this, and when you go to render, you can smooth your edges out to make it look even more nice. You could soften them, which when you set soften later in this class, we'll talk about that. It'll make them look a little bit more round, but the reality is everything is a straight line. Everything is paper thin, and it's made up of faces and edges and straight lines. Okay, so that might be something to get used to when you're working with rounder objects within this space. Okay, so what do they call the fact that they're breaking this down into individual lines? SketchUp is considered a polygonal modeler. So it deals with polygons. That's why each of these is broken up into a visual straight line, and then even when we create a circle, the circle is broken up into smaller individual straight lines. It's treating everything more like a polygon than actually creating a circle or creating a curve. All right, so when we're thinking of SketchUp, what are things that we're able to do in SketchUp that we might not be able to do in AutoCAD? So it starts a variety of modeling opportunities for us. We can do 3D in AutoCAD, but unless we're in Revit, we can't do fancy in color, easy to render a quick SketchUp drawing in AutoCAD. We have that sharing models opportunity where there's already a ton of models on top of products. Now, AutoCAD, as we saw through the Design Center, has the availability to bring in furniture, some engineering products, electrical, but I will promise you that SketchUp has way more. Yep, go ahead. Okay. So SketchUp has models of that you can put on the map. When I was a student here, I had a fellow student who actually did an entire model of Ivy Tech as it existed, and they put it on Google Maps. So a lot of places are available to view their SketchUp model and buildings, and we'll review that later in the class, or if you want to Google it yourself and look at a video. It's really neat that most places, their cores and shells have been created by people that work there or have done some design work with them, and they're available to the public. And everything's free to the public, and there's no licensing associated with it. You won't get in trouble for downloading any of that furniture or for using any of the buildings. On top of that, it allows tight or loose options. So we're pretty strict and stringent in AutoCAD with how lines work and what we can do with them. But when we're drawing in SketchUp, there's a variety of textures we can apply to make it look like we're actually sketching, and I'm not going to go over that today, but just to think about what it does. It could make these look sketchy edged, it could make it look sepia tone. So it's more for conceptual drawing when you're coming through and saying, how would I draw this cabinet really quick? But it's not only for conceptualizing, it's best for that. There's woodworkers who use it to make actual models of cabinetry all the time. So it just has a little bit better options than AutoCAD as far as all of those things are concerned. It also allows us to build from a photo. The book said not for beginners, model based on earth terrain, so you can actually get super specific with how the undulation of the ground is in Google Earth and drawing things from photos that way. I've never personally done that, but it sounds like something fun to try eventually, and I'm sure there's a video available. Don't worry, that would be in an advanced class. So then you could ask me, Allison, we showed me that plugin. Is it meant to do naturally photorealistic rendering? The answer is no. When they originally had the attention behind SketchUp, it was for quick modeling, instant sharing, and just to be used to draw cabinetry or draw up your house really quick or your small business. They weren't intending for this to be the next Revit. They weren't intending it for beautiful project presentations. But because everyone loved it so much, they created those plugins for it that you can download and add on top of them. And so the answer is no, but it is available. Newer to SketchUp, and there's a billion versions because now we're in 2016, but before they switched to years, they were up to 9, I think, and then they started going towards actual years since maybe 13. So they have now added dynamic components, which I don't know if I do for sure have a dynamic component loaded in here or not. I think I just have plain old cabinets. But dynamic components, and we'll cover this in a class session, just touching on everything briefly. If I come into my model and I clicked on the door, if it's a dynamic component, I would be able to get a tool in here that would open the door up. It could even run a quick video of how the cabinet works. It would just open the doors, close the doors. You could set one door to open or closed. So it shows the flexibility, and people have taken the time to take that empty inside of the product and build enough surfaces, faces inside of it that it looks like the true cabinet. So that's something that's available now. It's getting more complex, not harder, just more complex models that are available to the public for quick download. All right, so now we're going to take a quick SketchUp tour, which will talk a little bit more about the things that we're using. So like AutoCAD, this is our modeling window, this green space in here. It's not always green. There, now I have a sky. So when we're talking about the modeling window, we're talking about our main work environment. These on the side, and my GoToMeeting is covering them, but over here we have materials and components, and let me come up here and turn layers on really quick. And it snapped it up here, and you can dock and undock things just like in AutoCAD. Anything can be pulled down. Even if I want my modeling tools pulled down, I could pull those down. So you just drag them back up to dock them. So when they're pulled out like this and on your screen, they're considered dialog boxes. So sometimes you'll hear me say, go to this dialog box, and that's what I mean. When it's undocked from the station and it comes up as an informational box on your screen, mostly towards your model space. The other thing that we have very similar to CAD, and I don't know if you've been paying attention, is a status bar. So we use the same terminology down here, and this gives us information on what we're doing, including our available keystrokes, the instructions, general information, and the availability of an instructor. So let's see if this one has it down here. Let me try and draw a shape really quick and see if I can't get that too. So down here you could see where I was doing it, select center point to use control plus or control to change the number of segments. Those are things associated with the circle. If I come up to the selection tool to get out of that, and I end up going to the line tool, it says down here in my status bar, select point. So I could select my point and start drawing. Select end value. Now notice way over here, something else is happening. it's telling me my length in feet and inches that I'm drawing. So for AutoCAD, it does that too. It's just a little less used than it is in SketchUp. We use it a lot more. You can type in the actual dimension you want to draw something, and you could do it by selecting a point, and then if I type in 4 foot, and you can see it down in the bottom right hand corner, and hit enter, and then just like in AutoCAD, I come up to my measure tool in my toolbars and I measure it. It tells me, in fact, that was 4 foot. And very rarely, I don't think I'm going to teach you much on dimensioning these drawings because it's not as useful. Will we use dimensions? We don't need that for our 3D modeling. So you're more so checking your lines as you go or drawing it by dragging. You could come through and start a new line and just draw it. Say I want it to be 3 foot. It's a little more finicky, so you have to be like you can't be shaky at all really. You get it to 3 foot, and if you zoom in, it might be a little bit easier for me because I myself am shaky. So I know some people who take the time and do that. Obviously, it's a little bit harder than typing it in. Notice when I typed, different than AutoCAD where we're real specific and we use the 2 dash and whatever when we're doing feet and inches. It doesn't do that. So as you're drawing and you get into feet, it puts the inches right next to the 1 foot as opposed to separating them with the dash. If you want it to draw accurately, you need to set it up that way. So if I come back through and I click on my pencil tool, my line tool, hold on, my computer is freezing, okay. And again, I want maybe 1 foot 6 inches like below. I can type 1 foot and then right next to it 6 and then the inches symbol. And that will draw it, as opposed to typing 1 foot dash 6 inches. All right. So some other things you can't know because you can't see it from my side. I am using a mouse, just like I hopefully am using with AutoCAD to make it easier on myself, with a scroll in the center. And like AutoCAD, it zooms me in and out when I push the scroll in or pull the scroll out. I have a left click, which seems to do what it does in AutoCAD. It controls the tool I'm working in. I have a right click, which on the screen right now doesn't do much, but in certain areas it will. So very similar tools. And as we said, if you don't have a mouse, you can come up here to pan using your hand pan. You can use your zoom extents if you want to get back to your drawing, or if you're way out here and you're lost in space, always come back to that zoom extents to get pulled into everything on the screen. We can use our orbit tool to orbit, but we can also use our mouse tool to zoom, and if I click and hold the wheel, it orbits for me as well. So very similar to AutoCAD. You guys are already leaps and bounds above people who haven't taken CAD before taking SketchUp. I'm going to pause again and see if I can't find my chat menu, which I hid down to the corner. I know everyone's been talking about product software. Just make sure. Okay, so no one's added anything yet. And if we could hold our questions to the end, I'll try to leave some time. All right, so now we've talked about and visited some of the tools. I want to talk about what happens if you lose this toolbar. Layers gets closed out, or somehow you close out of all of your drawing tools. How can we fix that? You have your other menu at the top, the menu bar. So that's these: File, Edit, View, Camera, Draw, Tools, Window, Help, Menu bar. And you would simply go into Tools, I want to say it correctly, or View Toolbar, sorry. So I almost had an AutoCAD moment there. So view and then toolbars, and it'll give you a listing of available toolbars. So the useful ones are advanced camera tools when you're doing modeling videos. So camera is the one that's pan and zoom extents and all of those tools. And here's a couple extra. Let's see what classifier is. Very rarely do we use that. I'm going to keep it off. Drawing, you could have that open. There's our individual rectangles, line tools, freehand. Dynamic components, that's only useful if we've loaded in dynamic components like the cabinetry I was talking about. It can stay off for what we're doing now. Edit, we need those tools. Getting started, so that's basically a nice all-in-one toolbar. If you want to have that instead of finding individual pieces up here, it gets everything together. So this was what was pulled up originally when I logged in. So it has pretty much everything you need. You could dock them individually with a little more information up here. Layers, I always want that open because we'll be working with it. Measurements, principal, sandbox, shadows, all of these. I want to see what happens with the styles where it's coming up. Views, oh, it's kind of useful. Let's just stick with these for today. Okay, so those are the main ones that you're going to want to use for your homework, but obviously if you lose anything, that's where you want to go. View, toolbars, and check, 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 whatever you want. You can't hurt it. If you lost an individual one, just one of them, oh, I lost my camera. You can also right-click on the gray space of the toolbar and come back in and find your camera tool and open it that way. It was just initially we had nothing left, so it left us with our menu bar to figure out how we could get those tools back. All right, so let's see. Window, let's go through each of our menu bar options. Let's talk about saving. So under our menu bar, we have File, like in all of our other wonderful programs. There's New, which would open a new drawing. Open, this is if you want to open from a saved folder and you had this saved to your desktop, you could find it that way. Save, Save as template, so similar to AutoCAD. We'll just be saving as for probably, if not all of them, the majority of the sessions. I don't think I'll have you create a template for SketchUp. Send to layout, 3D warehouse, things we don't really care about. But these things we do care about for today, as you'll need to save your work at the end. And you simply go in and treat it like CAD or Word and save as in a location you want to find it again. Here's a good one to know, edit undo. But here's the keyboard shortcut, Alt plus backspace. Notice they give you the keyboard shortcuts next to anything where it's available. So if you want to practice that. Unhide and unlock, those are a little bit more advanced. Hidden geometry, again, more advanced, but that's in a case where, say, I don't want to see this edge, and I right-click and I click hide so that it looks nice and smooth. So that's a tool you might want to use as we get closer to modeling, rendering. Then you can hide it, and then this view hidden geometry shows me a dotted representation of everything that I have hidden. So if I wanted to, I could unhide it. Because once it disappears, we're like, how do I get it back? But that's what it's for. You view the hidden geometry, and then you can come through and unhide it because you remembered that was missing. Although you will be prompted by the fact that it is indeed missing. It just gets a little bit gray later when you've hidden so many things. It's hard to get them back. All right, so I'm going to turn that off actually. Camera. So the main ones for you, if you want to think of how things are in space, are top, bottom. This is like the view cube in AutoCAD. We could look at our drawing from the bottom as my model loads. So I'm looking at the bottom of the house. Well, in this case, the bottom of the shapes. If I look at the tools from the top, that's that bird's eye view. Front, back, left, right. So all of these views available. Again, you can't hurt it. It's just rotating a camera. It's not changing anything or saving anything in that view. You're just rotating your camera. parallel projection. So that made it look flat in 2D. I don't know if you noticed what happened there, but it made it perfectly 2D. I know it was a little 2D before, but parallel projection makes it look like line drawings. Perspective. So it helps you get back into what you would want to do for your perspective drawings. 2-point perspective, that can be a design specific. If you're told to do a 2-point, you could print off that, what it's going to render to that, and you'll have it completely done. This is something advanced. Here's our tools that we see out here, the zoom extents, there, zoom extents, pan. So they're available in the camera options, but here's our camera toolbar, so it's the same thing. Position a camera, these are advanced. Here's draw, so it's kind of pulling again from the available tools in our toolbar, and shapes and lines and arcs. And then here's eraser, paint bucket, and eventually we'll get into paint bucket. There's automatically tons of things loaded in already to our drawing that we can use to model that look pretty good even though they're not perfectly rendered. And then if we go back up to tools, there's the move tools, which are on a toolbar as well. And then tape measure, dimensions and text. We're not going to worry about this for this class. And advanced camera tools, which we'll use maybe for our presentation way at the end of the semester. And here's model info, preferences, and 3D warehouse. So we talked about that symbol over here is the 3D warehouse to get to all those models, and then some of the things to do with layout and textures as well. So it's really a lot of repetition of what's already in your toolbars, minus this first tool that we'll need and use for our saving. Okay? So let me come through and check off a couple of instances. So I am going to go ahead and change my camera view. Standard views, top. Okay, to get out of that parallel projection because that blue was driving me crazy. And I can rotate this and I can come back to the front and get into a better view to look at my original perspective on this drawing. Okay, so I'm going to try, and I've talked about how things are coplanar. Let me be clear about drawing a shape and it being coplanar. So a face happens when we said 3 or more lines come together, but they also have a stipulation of being coplanar, so on the same plane. Sometimes if you draw, and these are like our axes, okay? So the blue, the green, and the red, they represent our X, Y, and Z. But in SketchUp, you're concerned with blue, green, red. So think X, Y, Z, blue, green, red. And not in that order necessarily, but we more think in colors and we stop thinking of actual coordinate system and more of a visualization of the 3D colors. So I could come through and try to draw a shape that's not on the same plane, but it'll default back to a flat surface. So it's not going to let me draw a cone unless I come through and do multiple lines and build it as a complete shape and then add another side to it. Your lines have to be on the same plane in order to make those faces. You're not going to end up drawing a 3-dimensional shape. It's going to snap to a flat face every time. Okay, and there'll be instances where you're going to want to finish out a nice shape, but something like that'll happen where you think you're like it snapped to the edge here, but look what happened. This line is not on the same plane as those lines and could not create a face. So that's where we have to pay really good attention to our red, blue, green, and that we're staying on the same plane. Did you see how easy it was to think from up here that this was all flat and everything was going to work out? When you asked me to sketch up hard, No, it is not hard, but you have to think about rules of space and drawing things more three-dimensionally so you can notice when things like this go wrong. Okay, so let me go in a little bit deeper on some other subjects. I'm just trying to reach so many points before we hit that 720 mark. Okay, so let me go ahead and make sure that I think I've covered. Oh, okay, I have one more page of main things I want to cover before I go into a little more complex stuff. Drawing a line all the way across the face divides it, so we kind of talked about that again, but let me revisit it. Same thing with the circle. If I go from one side of the circle to the other side of the circle with the line tool, and how am I drawing the line? Okay, let's get more specific. I left click the line tool. I pick a point, which there's a bunch of points to choose from, just like in AutoCAD how we have a midpoint, notice it's blue, end point, center, it's dark blue. So it'll say different things. Sometimes there'll be intersection. There's a variety of points that you can snap to, and those are called inferences. So inferences. And it's inferring where to snap to. So center is a good one. Again, midpoint, end point, intersection, although we don't have an example of it that we can probably get to pop up right yet. And on face is another one if you're just on the face coming off. And on edge is another one. Notice I'm taking a lot of time to talk about this because it might be on your quiz. So there's quite a few point inferences that are available to you. Okay, so by going from one endpoint to another full endpoint, what we've done is now, when we use our selection tool, we can see it broke it into two faces. Now you're familiar with, in some way, all of these 2D associated tools, although they're now used for 3D. You can move things, you could move a whole shape, or you can move just the one individual circle. If I came through here, let's notice something about moving though, really quick. Oh my gosh, look at what happened. How can SketchUp go wrong? Everything snapped to itself. So this will be when we talk about layers and groups later on in the evening, why it's important. But you could move quite a bit of things, 3D or 2D in this situation. Move them all at once to the side, forward, in space. Okay, so poor Rosie, she's hovering over my object. Looking at the push-pull tool, it's the one that allows us to make things look nice and three-dimensional. It pulls them off of the ground and gives some height to them. So notice it says pick the face to push or pull. I left click the face and it says drag to push or pull face or enter value. So I could just drag it arbitrarily. I want to cover up with a wall maybe. Or I could have come in here if I was starting with this face and started drawing it and typed in 6 inches, enter, and it automatically draws a 6-inch height. So it's really easy though. Did you see how smoothly that tool worked? It's not because I'm a super genius, I promise you. It's because it's that simple. You just click again to lower and raise. And then notice it says offset limited to this. Sometimes you'll get that. It's whatever the lowest height was. But you can snap it up and continue to go as high as you want. Come to the middle. Just pay attention to the distances. You know, if you were doing cabinetry, you want it at 36 inches or 42 for a different counter height. It's very slick. Easily allows us to break these shapes up and start drawing things. It's not thinking super hard about it. What a wonderful software to work with, okay? So that's how you use the push-pull tool. It's very simple like that. Let's notice what we can't do. Cannot push-pull curved or smooth surfaces. So you would have to draw another arc if you want to modify that. But we can push-pull all of our faces and manipulate them in different ways until we have it how we want it to be. We could take then, now that I've created this odd shape, that whole thing. So just notice how things end up creating new faces by dragging them across. So now this becomes one little shape where it had been part of that big shape because the edges are cutting off the faces. So be thinking about that as you click things to different heights and add them together. Here we have this nice edge division, so even though I put them at the same height, they're functioning as separate shapes. But when I come through and I delete these, it can merge this face to be one face that I can now move as one individual shape. All right, so pretty neat. Obviously, the only problem with this right now is it's all connected to itself. If I want to move this much of it and I just go, okay, yeah, I'm going to move that big shape over, not happening. It is all locked in and stuck to each other and messy. So more than ever, not as much with CAD, although layers are important in CAD, layers, groups, and making things components is important. All right. Bye, Rosie. Okay. So let's talk about making things groups. Maybe go back to the big drawing, if it'll load. I'll give it a little bit of time. Okay, so I'm in my selection tool, and notice how this is all highlighted gray. I want to get out of that, and it was inside the box. There'll be a lot of double clicking out of things. So if I got in here by double clicking to get in this group, but I want out of it, I could hit escape, or if I was in there, I could double click on a different space, but it'll take me into something else. So it's kind of up to you. If you're good at working between things, you can do that, because I can just click on different things and get different places if you know where you want to go. But if you just want to escape out, you're stuck in something, you can hit the escape key on your keyboard. Okay? So very nice, this house of mine, and do not judge me if it's not perfect. I just built this for this semester pretty accurately off your plan. I knew I was going to change some things with the walls later internally, so I think, you know, the deck, I drew it mostly to how it would be, and I kind of had to guess at this part because there's no existing 3D for it. But now you can see what this beam situation is that they have going on in this turn of the century home. And I have some objects in here, and you can see that there's a big blue box around all of these things. But then when I double click inside, we saw that there's individual options to select different things. So what does that big grouping mean? This is a group. We create a group, for instance, if I come through and I draw a rectangle and I push it up because I want, like, let's say a trash bin, and I triple click it, it allows me to select everything that I just built of that shape. So it's really hard to see. I'm going to hit escape off of it really quick. Escape out. So I'm going to come through, and right now it's one face. If I one click things, it'll be one face. If I double click, it'll be the face with the edges. If I triple click, it takes the whole thing that I just made. And the importance of this is because I created this shape on top of this driveway, if I go to move it, ooh, we're lucky. It hasn't connected to anything yet. Oh, I know why. So nice of me. I've already made it into a group. But if this was the driveway originally created, and then I had that box, let's see if it's on the right face. Now it's connected to the driveway and we can't do anything about it. So I would want to come in here and triple click it, but because I've created them at the same time, it's also picking up the driveway. So let's see, I've almost made it too nice for you guys. Triple clicking though allows me to get whatever I drew last and make it into one object. So I can right click then and say make a group. Now that it's a group, it's like the driveway and like the cabinets. It functions as itself. It's not going to attach to anything at all. And it allows me to come in and place it in the home where I want it to go. And I can manipulate it. But when I go to manipulate it, I want to double click and start adding onto it within its group. So I could push pull it out. If I knew this was going to be a room, I could push pull this to the dimension that I want that wall to be, and then I could come through and within my house, I've nicely turned the roof off for you guys so you can kind of see in your drawing. That's the only downfall I really feel of SketchUp is sometimes it gets confusing to look at things if it's not on perfect layers. So I could finish off a wall, but then when I escape out or double click out and I go to move this, it's just something existing inside. If I don't end up liking the layout of those walls, I can delete it all at once. So I want you to make anything that you make new an entire group and then bring it in. But let's see if I can create it from scratch and have an instance to show you exactly why you're doing that. I've already made the floor a group, the walls a group, the driveway a group. Otherwise, if I didn't, the floor would be its own thing. Let's see if I can unmake it a group. Nope, I'm only allowed to hide it now. So otherwise, it would stick to the floor like how it's stuck to the driveway. You have to keep things either as their own groups and experiment with them inside by double clicking, or you have to build them in another complete separate model so that they don't stick to this and bring them in as a model. Like this set of cabinetry was drawn in somebody else's model and I downloaded it from online so you could start a new drawing if you're really scared and bring in a model and make it a group and then just drag and drop it in. And you could have known where it was going to go because you had the floor plan lines drawn in the other model. And even if I want to, I could go to Edit, Undo Move, for those of you who love that tool. It's easy to access, and that helps save me the step of moving it completely back into place. Okay, so now I have some walls, and they're easy enough to delete. But here's another option that says Make Component. What is the difference between a component and a group? So if I make it a component, let's see what happened. It still has the blue bounding box, but if I copy it, edit copy, dun, da, 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 you can do it, computer, stick with me, edit, paste. Pay attention to what should happen, everything going right. So I come in here and then I push pull. Notice it changes the identical object or the other copied part of this the same exact way. This is useful for things like cabinet doors or things that you have identical ones or mirrored objects that you want to just create something and have it change all at once. So if I change the handle off the door, it changes every cabinet at once because I've used the door component. But that's the main difference. So the majority of the work that you'll be doing drawing walls, I just want you to make a group. I don't want it to be modifying other things within your drawing, and really you don't need copies. But that's what a component does. A component is a group that has this property to it of being able to copy in the different locations that you've pulled it into your drawing. Okay? So I can double click to get out and hit escape. And I'll move on and see if there's anything I'm missing as far as the basics. Drawing an edge, push pull. I have a book with me, and I wanted to read a nice explanation on page 27 of my book. Again, you do not have a book for this class right now, but it should be okay with the videos. Okay, so tips from the professionals. It says working with colored axes. When you're working with colored axes, you need to keep 3 important things in mind. And let me go back to the lesser model. All right, here's our axes. So it says the red, green, and blue drawing axes define 3D space in your model. If you were standing at a spot where all 3 axes meet the axis origin, the blue axis would run vertically, right? The red and green axes define the ground plane, so we have red and green in SketchUp. You would be standing on top of them. So we had Rosie the Riveter in previously, and she was standing at this, and her vertical side was here. Her feet were standing on top of these 2 axes. The axes are all at right angles to one another and extend to infinity from the origin. So just like AutoCAD's symbol in the lower left-hand corner when we're in there. It says when you draw, move, or copy something parallel to one colored axis, you're working in that color's direction. So for instance, if I draw a circle and I move it this way, you notice that there's a green line trailing behind it because I'm working with it in that color's direction. So that's how they want us to think about it. Take a look at color palette 2 in the first image. Okay, so it says then if I move it to go the other direction, I'm moving in the red direction. And if by some miracle, because this is temperamental, you get it to stick onto the blue axis, I'm then moving it in the vertical blue direction. Okay, so those lines help you know how you're working within space by the trail that it's leaving behind it, by the prompts that you're getting, and how you're moving it. So here we have a black line because we're just going off in some arbitrary direction. But again, if we snap to the green, we can know we're going parallel or perpendicular to the red. So think of things in terms of color and space instead of thinking of them as the X, Y, Z. Okay, it says, take a look at the color palette in the first image. We're drawing a line parallel to the red axis, so we would say we're drawing in the direction of red. We know that the line we're drawing is parallel to the red axis because it turns red. Oh, yep. And in the second image, we're moving a box parallel to the blue axis, so we're moving in the blue direction. We know parallel to the blue axis because of the dotted blue line. The point of using the red, green, and blue axes is so that SketchUp knows what you mean. Remember that one problem with modeling in 3D on a computer is the fact that you're working on a 2D screen. And consider the fact that this is difficult. We can click the cylinder and with the move tool move the cursor up. How is SketchUp supposed to know whether we meant to move it up? So that's interesting, like just to think about how hard these softwares are working. If you did create a cylinder, although it doesn't have to be, how does it know that we are push-pulling it up to begin with? How is it thinking in a 3-dimensional way? It has to think of it in relativity to these different access points. So it says the colored axes come into play. If we want to move it up, we go in the blue direction. If we want to move it back, we follow the green direction because green axis happens to run from the front to the back of the screen. So really when you come into the model, we came in at this angle. So they're saying if you want to move it back, you know that green, and watch, this will hopefully take everything with it. Green moves back and this moves over or horizontally from left to right. Okay, so that's a better understanding of how your axes are working for you. Let me go ahead and read if I've missed any your point inferences that I talked about. It'll be on your quiz. So there's endpoint, midpoint, which is cyan or light blue. And I bet I can show you again with this cube or cube cylinder. Okay. So if we go through and we need to snap to something, there's on face, endpoint. I think I saw it there for a second. There's on edge right now because this whole pulled up item is an edge. There's center of that circle. There's intersection, which is a really hard one to come across because it always thinks of it as a midpoint or on edge. So if you ever see it, it is another one of your point inferences. Okay. Measurements. Already talked about using 6 foot 6 inches next to each other instead of dashed. You can enter after the finishing command. Oh, that's an interesting feature of SketchUp. So when you're in SketchUp, if you wanted to, for any reason, you could just draw a line. And before exiting out of the command, it says select end or enter point value. So we already drew the line, but if then I go ahead and type in 3 foot, enter, it should adjust it. And I'm pretty sure it can't have been that accurate. So I might have to give this one another try. So if I come in and I draw the line and hit enter and then type 3 foot, let's see if it adjusted. I had it working earlier. It's not something I use all the time. Huh. Wow, I didn't feel like we're this zoomed out. Let's try it in our other drawing because I didn't set up the units on this one. I'll see if it makes any difference. So supposedly what you're supposed to be able to do is like if you create a line to begin with and you end it and then you type in 3, or let's do something bigger, 6 foot, enter. Okay, that's what I was trying to do. I have no idea why it wasn't working in the other drawing. I'm sorry for that technical difficulty. But you can type in the distance after, say you're like, oh no, I drew that a little bit too short. I'm going to retype in the actual distance I want. Then it adjusts the line or shape scale for you. So that's kind of different from AutoCAD. Once we've drawn it in AutoCAD, we have to delete it and start over or stretch it and pull it by its pick points. Okay, so let's do a little bit more in depth on groups versus components. And oh, I wanted to mention that if I didn't get to go really in depth on this and we don't have a ton of time left, the video under session 8, there's one about groups and components specifically. So if you need to review that, you can. I want to talk about it in terms of your homework. So we've already kind of talked about groups. And I feel like once you get in here, it will be pretty easy that you draw and type in the size for your line, the rectangle. If you want a rectangle that's 3 foot by 3 foot, you type 3 foot, comma, 3 foot, enter. And there you have it. So everything looks and works similar to CAD. Again, if I then decide that, hey, I wanted to make sure this was a shape and I'm using it for a counter, and then I'm like, okay, this could end up sticking to the ground, but it's not going to in my model because I've been very kind to you and already grouped things so that you don't get frustrated and pull your hair out. You would triple click, 1, 2, 3, and it highlights everything you've just drawn, and you right click to make it a group that now will not be affected by everything else when you double click to work on it. So it's like working on it in its own imaginary workspace now. You can do whatever you want to it. Obviously, save it as this version in case you go in and modify it and really mess it up. Also, you have the edit undo if you mess it up in the first couple of steps. But you can double click out of it and hit escape to get back into your workspace and modify it. So for your homework, let's go ahead and look back at the website. Of course, I've closed out of it to get rid of messes on my screen. But if I go out to Blackboard, okay, and then I'm going to go to CAD, class sessions, session 8, and I want to go to homework and quiz. Basic SketchUp. Okay. So I want to look at that PDF and figure out where I'm at on my plan. So I am in, oh, layers. That's what we're missing. Okay. So really quick, now that you know groups and models, I don't feel like I have to go into a lot of depth, but the corner that I'm in is here. There's the deck, and here's the corner you're working from. So I'm asking you to draw those walls as groups according to our PDF online from that corner. So I want from 13 feet over, this one's 16'6", so it goes all the way to the column, and it's 4 inches in. So I want you to use your CAD math and your CAD brain on that front to draw the basic properties of the wall. And you don't have to do them as completely separate. You could come through and draw them as if you wanted to, those dimensions, and it only works this way because this is already like this, but just do it as a whole thing, you know, one whole object. It doesn't have to be 2 pieces of wall. You could draw that whole shape in there as your outside walls of your room. So it really should not take that much time. I know you're learning it and you're playing with it, but it also shouldn't be that scary because it's just the one corner you're playing with. And I've locked the floor and walls so you can't stick to them. Okay, so that's the majority. But the other piece that we're missing is layers. So if I come over here to my layers, which is showing up here, and this is the default tray. It looks like this isn't the simplest way to view this. Hold on, I'm letting it load. If I come back up here and make sure my layers is on, and I can tell by the check mark what is on and what is not. So make sure that it's not hanging out behind anywhere. Oh, it's up here. I'm not used to that. I'm used to it being on my screen. I'm going to undock it so I can really look at it. Okay, so here I have a bunch of different layer tools. If I come through with layers and I want, sorry, it disappeared on me again. Oh, there it is. You have to bear with me for a second because I've been working in 2015 and I don't know exactly where the properties for this are. Toolbars. Edit. Gosh darn it. Usually there's like, just like in CAD, a little box right here. And the little box will say layer properties. And so then you can open it and see all of these layers, just like I have them right here, but you can also then add and subtract them. They don't have a lot of options like CAD. They'll look just like this. And then you can add a new one or get rid of an old one and change a color. But that's really mostly the properties that are available to you. So let's see if I can find that. I'm going to take a little bit of time to do that. And I don't think since they downloaded the new one, I can show you. Okay, so they did uninstall for 13. Let's give it a try. I might be able to prove to you that it's usually a standard tool. Okay. Remind me later. Okay, so then if I'm in here and I turn on my layers and it's up here, so this is what I'm used to. I'm not going crazy. I'm not trying to be bad at this, but the layer manager is to the side. And by clicking on that, this is where we can add and subtract layers. So I need to find a new way to get that layer manager up there on 2016. So I am going to come through. And then there's also another thing that's available in here so this was the other tool I looked for and I couldn't find in 2016 just recently. This tool, which I think you guys would love, is Instructor, and it gives you step-by-step instructions on the tools that you're using as you're using them. Okay, so it's like rectangle tool. Click here, move the cursor, click the second corner, escape. If you went to the line tool. So these should be available in 16 as well. So let's take a few minutes to figure out this last piece of our puzzle. I'm going to go to the lesser of the two drawings to make it a little less complicated. Oh, I feel like I just saw it pop up for a second there. So no. Camera section, toolbars. Let's try that window default tray. Default tray layers. Okay, so I'm going to see if it makes a difference to have this default tray. Okay, it does. So this default tray, I guess, is what you're going to use in 2016. That is news to me today. But when you're in here, and I went up to Window, Default Tray, and then it popped back up again over here on this dialog box, and it was actually in here when I opened originally. Under the default tray, here we have the add and subtract layers. When I was looking at your homework, the rubric, so session 8 rubric, and that one's going to open a little differently since it's a Word file. Okay, so we have draw the circle, which you saw was as easy as selecting a circle tool. I'm not asking you to do it any specific way. Same with the line tools, the rectangle tool. Freehand shape, that's the squiggly guy. Just draw with it. A 2-point arc. Then the advanced use, make the following layers, room 1, walls, and furniture. So within the boathouse layer, drawing, you're going to add from the default panel over here, from the default tray, room 1, walls. Okay, and pretend this is a wall for the sake of pretending. And I'm actually going to come through and do what your homework is. So I pretend I'm in the drawing of the actual building, and I've triple clicked, so I could have done that instead of I selected everything. Triple click. It's really hard to triple click this. Okay, and then make it a group. All the walls are connected. I can modify them from there. But then I want to right click and it says entity info. And I want to select that. And up here, it's actually, this default tray isn't so bad. I kind of see why they're going to it. So it has all the useful things like your material editor, your entity info, and your styles and other things. And here's your instructor. Okay, so this is where everything's gone. So here's my instructor tool. The books I have, they don't teach to the nuances of 16, so this is good to know. You can minimize it, make it bigger, select and draw with the tool. We start our arc. Remember, you have your own personal instructor. Come to my lab hours, but don't forget you have this guy down here. He seems to be pretty helpful, step-by-step instructions on how to do things, and even shows you what it'll look like as you draw it in space. So we want to go up here though. So I right-clicked entity info and it prompted me to go up here. And I want to change the layer to that room 1 walls. It'll be the same thing in the boathouse. And if any of you are freaking out and they're like, why don't you show it in the boathouse? Well, I can show it in the boathouse. Let me close out of this. Ooh, that doesn't look good. It's okay though. It's just loading. So once it's loaded through, and save all the time because these models are big. And some of you are working on very tiny laptops. And while they support SketchUp, the bigger the model, the slower it's going to be. In here then, let's see if I can get to that. If I exit out of this and I go to Window, Default Tool, Show Tray. Okay, so that's how we get to it. Now you can troubleshoot that. And if I took this guy who I made a group and he was my walls for any reason, and I move him into place back where I want him in the back corner. Now I think this is a good example of space, although I've done good. So SketchUp has gotten so much better since I was a student. See how that like knew to snap it to the floor still? Sometimes it's not going to be that perfect and it's going to throw it like way up high and you won't notice it until you scroll down like that. So just do check things as you draw them that they're going to the parts of like on the faces that you want them to be. So now I've got this guy in space and I've drawn my walls. I'm simply going to change his layer to the one that you created, and I'll pretend for me that I wanted him on kitchen. You want it on walls, room walls 1. So now that's his layer, and I could check it by clicking off using my select tool on something else and it's layer 0, and then clicking back and it's on kitchen. Okay, so for your homework for the rubric, you're going to make the following layers: room 1 walls, and then another layer furniture, although we're not going to use furniture this week. That's 20 points. Draw the walls to the correct size in SketchUp using the attached PDF. And the only thing I left out, please write this down in your notes. I can add it to the text online, but just note, we're just going to do 96 inches high for this week. We'll talk about modifying it later. Why? Yeah, for wall height. So the height of your walls is 96 inches, and then you have the dimension for everything else. Draw a freehand shape. Let's see. Make the walls a group. So that's what I just did by the triple clicking until everything I just drew came together. And then right clicking and making it a group. And then put the group, like we just did with this box, on the right layer that you created for this week. So a lot better than build an entire house, right? So this should be a good jumping off point. I know that we're going to be rusty coming back from the break, but I wanted to make sure that we at least know how to build walls, because we are going to end up building the rest of the walls and putting the furniture in the next week. It is fun. Please take time on the week after your break to work through it and kind of troubleshoot with it and get familiar with it. The more you do it, the easier it is. Again, watch any videos. They don't have to be the videos I posted. There's tons of great videos out there. If you're working with the Mac and you want to Google it, Google's great. I mean, some of you came to my lab hours the other day. I had 7 people there, and 3 of the things that were big issues I answered by saying, well, let's Google it. And it automatically brought up the Autodesk help, and immediately there was an answer to this crazy problem, or at least if not an answer of how to completely fix it, why it wasn't working. So the search tools that you have can answer a lot of your questions. And the reality of the world is you're paying for this class, so I will be there to help you, and I'm more than happy. I love lab hours to help you. But when you get in the real world, you are going to have to search for things. So go ahead and practice it, because the answers are already there. Everyone's had that issue. They've had the thing crash. They had the line not work. And if it's not in the book, it's online. But you can come to me if you're just a better learner with somebody in person. But take the time, just if you have it first, maybe some of you already are doing that. Just don't always go straight to asking for help, because 90% of my job is finding things out on my own. But I feel like this is manageable and it should be fun. I mean, if you might get in here and decide you want to draw your kitchen or work on that closet project that you never got the opportunity to do. And now you can do it very simply using SketchUp. Just make sure each individual component that you want to be on its own, you make into a group. Okay? Do I have any big questions or little questions? Pull the chat to the side. Where is the layer property? Did we already answer that when we found the default tray? Joanne? on a Mac. All right, well, let's see. If I go back, I might have that answered to the side of me, but not on the screen with you in my index of my book. It should be under, like, to pull up the layers in that tray. When you went up to window, is there no default tray available on a Mac? Is window available? Window should be available. Okay, and there wasn't a default tray option underneath window? Are you, and you did do 2016, just checking. Okay, then I would go ahead and, well, let me know this. Did it work the other way that I did in 2015, where you right click and you turn the layers on and it has a properties manager associated with it already? It does work, and you can click on it like that and see that little tool as well where you can bring down the list with everything to add and subtract it? Or do you just get stuck with this and you have to look at it this way? Like, can you see it like in 2013 where we had the layers on and it has this little box to drop down the menu and be able to add and subtract? There's a layer in window. Not sure, I'll talk to you later. Okay, that's fine. I am available to you Mac users, and it's useful because now we have 3, I think, that are downloaded 2016 on Mac. So like I said, I'll try and in the weeks to come, and maybe tomorrow on my day off, if you need help, we can talk, but also I can see if there are different videos available through SketchUp online because they have hundreds of them. So I might be able to just look at YouTube in the meantime and upload those to the link and separate them in a different folder for you guys. So I'll try and look into that tonight. Anyone want to talk about last week's homework? I know everyone struggled, and I know I already answered quite a few questions in lab hours, and so did other lab technicians. But let's see. Do we simply open the PDF from the class session to enter it on into our screen? Could you show again? It should open up like all the previous PDFs. So when I went into, oh, it's teeny tiny at the bottom. Oh no, gotta be kidding me. Would close out. So when I enter in my information, all I did was right click it and then it automatically opened in another window for me. That's how it usually works from these computers. For you, Mary, what's happening when you click on it? Is it downloading? Going to your downloads in the upper left, right-hand corner?
I haven't tried it yet. I just was watching what you did and it felt like I may have missed something.
Okay. So when we come into CAD and then we go to session, class session, session 8.
Right.
All right. And then homework and quiz. There was a little arrows like usual with past assignments. So then I just came down and I clicked open. And it opens it in a new window. But then from there, you could print it, or usually you can save it and save it to your desktop or wherever you want it to be located, and then have it just on your computer.
Okay.
Okay.
And I was talking about the sketch of the boathouse.
Oh, yeah, I said I was going to download that for you at the end of class. Okay, let me do that really quick. No, and I'll close out, and nope. And close out, no. I'm going to go ahead and go back to homework, and I'll come through and edit this. And let me add this note while I'm thinking about it. Notice again, 108 students, don't draw what I drew. Draw a room that is actually in your plan as you're designing it for Cheryl's class. Everyone else, use the PDF. Okay, so note wall height is 96 inches. Okay, yay. And then we're gonna come down here, browse my computer, and computer, find my Ivy Tech, boathouse, open. So it shouldn't be too big, I hope. And I'll submit it. And then you guys should be able to open it. It'll be just another downloadable file. Cross your
So
fingers.
then how do we get it into SketchUp?
It'll open. When it should open. I
Okay,
could give it a
just open it.
test. Once it's downloaded here, I'll give it a test. I'll click on it and see how exactly it'll show up. So
Okay.
if I move my chat and minimize this. So here's my SketchUp file and I click open. So here's what's happening. Do you see it in the bottom left-hand corner? It's downloading it because it's such a big thing.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, so it's downloading there. It'll either open or be in my downloads. So it looks like it finished and it stayed down here, and then I can click show in folder or open. So I'm going to click open just to see if it'll open in SketchUp. And then you click start using SketchUp, and it should be bada bing, bada boom. Our model is there. Like magic. Okay, so then it's like, oh, right, I'm zoomed in on the wall. Then you'll want to click zoom extents so you can get out and see the whole model.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think any other questions about last week's homework was where I was, unless you want to continue asking this. Questions about this week really quick. Where did the show tray fit in? Where did it fit in, or how did I get to it? The default tray is what you're thinking of? Get to it. Okay. So if I'm closed out of here, it was under window and default tray, show tray. And then it popped up over here with all those useful tools, the instructor, the materials, which we're not doing this week. You're not using a Mac, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay, hold on. It might just be what's on and available here. So what does yours say? It just has a few tools, but it's missing others?
Let me get there. I have a really bad cold, which is why I've just been typing tonight. So.
Oh.
Okay, so Windows default. Mine says hide tray or rename tray there at the top.
That's interesting. So when you went
So
to
I go to
window,
window, and then default tray, and then I.
that's because
Sorry.
it's open somewhere on your screen then. Those only show up when it's open, either hanging out behind your drawing or minimized. Like your default tray must be somewhere else in the space, because it's telling you that you can hide it by hiding it, or you could rename it. So when you show it, it's telling you it's on your screen somewhere.
Okay. Okay.
Is it? Could you find it?
Sorry.
No, it's
Yes.
okay.
So then when you go to the default tray,
Mhm.
then what do we layers?
Yeah, for layers. That's where your
Okay.
layers are up here. And then it looks like, let me see though, because it already looks different then. Okay, hold on. I want to make, oh, I pulled off to the side, so I want to figure these things out and like what and help you guys before they happen. So like I just pulled my layers off and now it went away and now I don't have the nice tool to subtract it and add it. So if I go into Window, Default Tray, Layers, Window, Default Tray, Layers. Okay, so if that disappears like it did on mine, you know, and got all messed up, you can simply go back up to Window, Default Tray, and click and unclick the layers to have them show back up with the ability to subtract and add them.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the session and I'll post the recording tomorrow. Oh, wait, aha, I see a question. Janice, don't know. I still can't send any homework via PDF. Any thoughts what I should do? I have everything done for last week. Oh, I had told you to go ahead and send your drawing, Janice, because I could see the layouts within there to give you a grade since for the Mac it was just giving an issue with printing. And then I said I'd research that for you. So I'll be researching the PDF for your Mac, the Mac videos for SketchUp, and then Claudine had an issue with her leader lines doing something very interesting. So technical things like that I have as like a follow-up to either email you with a correction. So you don't need to worry about that. It's fine. I mean, before the final presentation, we will get it figured out, but you don't need to worry about it for your grade. All right. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end it and try to eat a sandwich really fast before my my next meeting. Okay. Have a good night,
Have a good
everybody.
spring break.
Oh, yeah, you
Have a good
guys
break.
too. I'm so excited.
Get to be with your baby more.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a good night. Bye. Bye, guys.